Welcome to the Manifested Podcast with Kathleen Cameron, a podcast dedicated to manifestation, law of attraction, and self-love for impact-driven entrepreneurs. My name is Tommy Collier, and I'll be your co-host along with Kathleen Cameron, who is a rock star mom, an international best-selling author. She's an 8-figure coach, a highly sought-after speaker, teacher, trainer, and television star. Kathleen is Chief Wealth Creator, CEO, and founder of Diamond Academy, and she is the perfect guide to lead you down the path of attracting more love, more money, and more success into your life starting right now. All right, welcome back, Kathleen. Here we are.
Oh, I'm so excited to be back. This process has been so much fun already, and I'm sure it's just going to get funner and funner the more episodes we record.
I agree. I'm loving it. And we're getting such good feedback already. So thank you, everyone, for who's listening and letting us know. Oh, by the way, let us know what topics you want to hear about on this podcast. Just want to say that first thing before we get started. Let us know what you want to hear about. And we will totally tailor this towards what you guys want to hear about.
Yeah. And much of the YouTube channel too has been driven by people's requests. So we really, really want to deliver you the content that you guys want to hear. So give us all the goods.
Yeah, absolutely. So this podcast is called the Manifested Podcast with Kathleen Cameron. So we thought today we would talk to you a little bit about manifestation. So Kathleen, let's talk about what manifestation means to you.
Oh, I love this topic so much. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is people will ask me every single interview that I have or news article or somebody that I meet and I tell them what I do. They say, well, what is manifestation? What do you mean? Isn't it just this woo-woo thing? And I often describe manifestation as becoming aware of something that was always already there. And so I right away think about some of the things that have been invented over time. And I think about them and the ability to have cell phones, the ability to use the internet, the ability to fly the airplane, all of that stuff has always been here all along. But it took somebody becoming aware of the ability to do it, kind of figuring it out in order to bring it into time and space here for us to experience it. So in a nutshell, that's how I see manifestation. You ask yourself, what is something I would like to see in my life? What would I like more of in my life? And then you become aware of how to become that version of you who then becomes it to then see it in the physical 3D world that we are living in today.
And a lot of people, I think nowadays in sort of the personal development or spiritual fields, you hear the word mindset a lot. You do hear the word manifestation too, but I think a lot of people that are talking about manifestation aren't talking about it in the actual scientific way.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Why not mindset? Why manifestation for Kathleen?
Yeah. So when I actually first started my business, and when I first started teaching this material, I call it this material. It's the best way to describe what I mean. It's a culmination of ideas and beliefs that I now teach. And when I first started in November of 2019, I actually started a Facebook group. I decided I was going to become a mindset coach. And I had taken a mindset program with Bob Proctor. So that's where my thinking was at. And I started a group, Mindset for Success. And so at that time, my awareness was that I was going to be a mindset coach. I was going to teach you how to set your mind up for success. So set up a mindset morning and evening routine, set up the right thinking within your mind that empowers you and all of those types of things. But as I got further along into the process and learning and my own growth and awareness, I realized that mindset was one piece of the puzzle, that the mindset was actually the intellectual processes that are a part of manifestation. And so manifestation for me is something that you're always doing. It's what our software, our hardware does. It is the human experience, manifestation. And we're always creating it. But oftentimes we're creating kind of what we don't want. We're creating the struggles. We're creating the limiting beliefs. We're creating the failures in our own lives a lot of the time. And so with manifestation, it's operating on all three planes: the spiritual plane, the intellectual plane, and the physical plane. So it's really connecting spirit, mind, and body as one to manifest the experience of life that you desire today in the 3D world. So mindset to me is actually limiting because it only talks about one part. So yes, I teach mindset, but I teach a whole array of things. And what's really interesting too, I've noticed, is that the language of mindset is a lot more acceptable, which means it's conventional. You're used to hearing it.
Yeah,
so if you say,
like psychology.
Totally. Yes. If you think about, like, I have a psychology degree that I took when I was 21 years old. And a lot of the stuff that I learned there is so relevant in manifestation. The power of the mind, the function of the brain, reprogramming your conscious and reprogramming your subconscious mind in a conscious way is really beautiful. And it's all part of manifestation. But manifestation to me goes above and beyond traditional psychology. It goes above and beyond traditional mindset work. And I think there's this message somewhere along the way that it's woo-woo, or that it's not as acceptable or conventional as like mindset is. People will say, I've hired a mindset coach, or I hired a business strategist coach, peak performance mentor, or whatever that language is. And I think all of that is so great and it's beautiful and there's a need for all of it. But I love what I do because I take manifestation and make it this place where you become whole. And there's a lot in my philosophy of manifestation that isn't in many others. And I think that's what has allowed me to just quantum leap and collapse time in the ways that I have, for sure.
Mm-hmm. For someone that's new to even talking or thinking like this, like just to break it down a little bit more, like just real simply, like what would be your definition of what is manifestation?
My definition of manifestation would honestly be becoming the version of yourself that has everything that you've ever wanted now. To be quite honest, manifestation has so much to do with your own self-concept and identity. It has to do with your oneness with spirit, with the universe, with God, whatever language you want to use. It has a lot to do with your daily habits, which are driven by your thinking, which is part of your mindset. So it's really that wholeness of how you see you. Why are you here? What is your purpose? What are your motives? What type of experience do you want to have? And then, how can we recognize that we're spiritual beings in a physical body having a human experience, and knowing that while we're here, for the short time that we are here, we get the opportunity to grow and develop and expand and experience it every single day better than we did the day before. That's why you all want to grow. That's why you all want to be better. You have this innate desire for more, and many people ignore it, but many people do not. And so every day, how can we live this moment, this experience to the fullest by understanding how to do that? And that's what we transform people in that way by allowing them to actually learn how to do this for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite definitions, if you will, of manifestation is making something that is not visible. So
absolutely.
So taking it from your imagination and making it happen in your physical world.
Yeah. Thoughts into things.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And many people can't accept that belief though, Tommy. And I think that's one belief that, like, if you get anything from this episode, really, like, what if you believed that every single thought that you had in your mind was going to manifest into the physical form? You would stop with the negative thinking and you would immediately start dreaming about what you want. So we talk about universal laws like crazy. I'm sure we're going to talk about it on this podcast, but the perpetual transmutation of energy was one of the first laws that I really started to believe because, somebody said to me, think about it. Every single thing that we see in the physical world today with our senses, with our conscious mind, it started as an idea in someone's mind. And I'm like, you're right. Even like the house that I live in, the kids that I have, the marriage that I'm in, like all of those things are all things that were ideas in my mind that were the invisible that became visible for me. And so it is something that we should absolutely 100% believe because it is our truth, but we second guess it. And so there's so much power in really believing that, having faith in that.
I remember when I first started learning about this and getting into this kind of thinking and this kind of material, and I hear similar stories from people who are new to this. When you first kind of accept that thought that everything I put my mind on eventually is going to show up in my world, it kind of is a little scary because it's like, oh man, I really got to monitor my thoughts then, I guess. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I like to use the language dominant thinking or my dominant feeling because it's ridiculous to think that every single individual separate thought becomes a thing. So I have one thought that I might fall down the stairs. Does that mean that I'm going to fall down the stairs? And so then it becomes like we get all up in our reasoning and our intellectual mind and we get all like fearful and anxious. So I like to use dominant feeling or dominant thinking. So if we think about a day and all of the different thoughts and feelings that we have in that day, what is it dominantly focused on? Is it dominantly focused on empowering, inspiring thoughts? Or is it dominantly like I'm fearful, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm shy, I'm ashamed, I'm sad? So for me, that allowed me to just slowly start to shift the dominant feelings. So slowly over time, it's like, I'm going to be 1% happier today. Okay, I'm going to be 1% more inspired today. Okay, I'm going to watch this, listen to this podcast, which is going to change my dominant feeling. The more positive and inspiring things that you listen to, the more you shift that dominant feeling every day. So it takes the pressure off.
Yeah. How can you become aware of what your dominant feelings and thinking thoughts are?
Oh my gosh. An old terminology from my psychology degree that I recently heard again and I remembered: introspection. So this is going within and becoming an observer of your own thoughts. So sometimes you don't recognize a thought, but you know the feeling. We use feeling words all the time to describe the vibration that we are in. I am sad. I am hungry. I am bored. I am frustrated. I am depressed. I am angry. I am mad. Or we say, I'm so excited. I am thrilled. I am grateful. I am happy. And so when we are describing how we are feeling, we're prescribing it for the future, right, Tommy? I got that one from you. So good. So yeah, I got that from you. So one of the beautiful things about that then is when you pay attention to the feeling and you're like, ooh, I'm recognizing I'm mad right now. Go back and ask yourself, what made me mad? Was it something that somebody said to me? Was it a thought or a memory that I brought up from the past? Is it something that I read on social media? Which happens all the time. Mm-hmm. Is it something on the news? Was it going and looking at how much money I have in my bank account? And then this is how we then pay attention to the thoughts that come from it. It's not the actual like experience or event in our life or the circumstance that we're reacting to. It's the meaning we've given it. So it's the thoughts about that thing that then create the feeling. So a lot of it has to do with our own perception as well and choosing to perceive differently. But being an observer is definitely, through introspection, is definitely the first step to do that.
Well, and if you haven't quite, subscribed to the idea or accepted the idea fully that your thinking really does create your reality, this might be kind of a harsh reality to accept, but you can also tell what your dominant thinking, what your dominant feeling is by what? By everything going on around you.
Everything
what's happening.
Everything in your world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People say they have bad luck. And I'm like, do you? I don't know. It has more to do with your dominant thought patterns. And then we're not saying this to like make you feel bad about it.
No.
But by taking ownership of it, you can go back and then say, okay, I learned this.
Yeah. So it's literally how you get control.
Totally take the control back. In my book, Becoming the One, I talk about the moment that I realized that I was not determined. It changed everything for me.
Talk about that.
Well, I thought Kathleen was Kathleen and she was just her and that's the way she was and that's her personality.
So you're talking about determined as in like not determined to succeed, but like already like fate.
Exactly. Like I am who I am, and that's the way that it is, and nothing can change it. I am me. So it's always like, okay, well, I can change my outside appearance, but I can't change who I am. Well, that belief did not serve me. Now I'm on this like quest of bettering myself and becoming the best possible version of me outside of what I look like. Becoming the best version of myself inside me, how I see me, how I engage in my world, what I believe in, the faith that I have, the confidence that I have in myself and in others. And now I know I can continue to change it. So if there's something I don't like about myself, I just switch it. I just change it. I can become a elevated version.
How?
I don't think we have time in a 30-minute podcast. But yeah, how to make a decision, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the how is in what you teach. So we're talking about manifestation and how you teach manifestation. So maybe let's go a little bit more into that. So
beautiful.
You teach about knowledge versus embodiment. Let's start there.
Okay, beautiful. So one of the things that I learned along the pathway through my growth and through building this business and teaching manifestation is that people really, really love to collect information. People love to read thousands of books, watch tons of YouTube channels, just absorb, and put all of this information into their minds and then store it there and never do anything with it. And I was someone like that. I have a lot of university degrees. I've taken a lot of certifications. I've read a lot of books and I've attained a lot of knowledge, but nothing changed in my life until I embodied that knowledge. So I did an interview in June of last year with Bob, and I got the beautiful opportunity to go to his studio and sit with him. And we had a beautiful face-to-face interview that was filmed for a docuseries. And in that interview, I asked him, Bob, I have just experienced quantum leap upon quantum leap in my life, collapsed time, if you will. Why did this information have such an impact on me, yet others could probably teach exactly what I teach, but not have the change in their experience like I have, the wealth generation and the business side and the success and all of that. What is it? And he said, Kathleen, it's because you internalized it. And even when he said internalized it, I was like, I feel like I need more there. Like, what do you mean internalized it? Like, I know what I mean because I've experienced it. I know how I feel about this information, but I don't know how other people feel. So it's like looking to him to explain to me the other people. And so he said, well, you internalized it. You became it. And I was like, I did become it. Like, I am manifestation. Like, there is no separation between me and what I teach. And then I was in my big black SUV with my driver back to my house, and I had an epiphany, and the word embodiment came to me. And I thought, that is exactly what he meant, embodiment. So the knowledge didn't just stay in the mind. The knowledge literally came into my body, and I live according to this information. So I teach you how to do XYZ, and I do that myself already. When I say to discipline your thinking from limiting thoughts to empowering thoughts, I'm disciplining my thinking all day long. Even you and I, Tommy, we have conversations, we check ourselves. We're like, oh, yes. We remind ourselves of things. We aren't over here teaching about manifestation and then behaving in a different way, especially if you think about it with coaching and mentorship and leadership. You want to follow people that are doing exactly what it is that you want to do. And so how can you be teaching this material and teaching people to believe in themselves, but not willing to believe in yourself for you? I think that's the real work and the real growth. And that's why things have been so drastic for me. Yeah.
I was just trying to think of like an analogy, and I was thinking about like a swimmer. So like someone who wanted to become like the world's greatest swimmer. There's all kinds of people who could tell you about the way that the body moves in water or how the muscles work. how the, like if you were swimming, let's say in the open ocean, how the weather is going to affect it, all kinds of science people. But no one really knows until they dive in, until they jump in and swim. Right. So it's like, that's what I see you doing is you're actually like, you're diving in and you're swimming and you're learning how to become an Olympic swimmer. Like as you go along, you're not just like
Absolutely.
gathering all the information about how to do it. You're actually in the water.
Yeah. And I do think that that's why when people meet me in person or they meet me on a Zoom or they interview me, the feedback is always the same, that there's just something about my energy. It's contagious. It raises their vibration. After I meet with somebody, they always message me and I'm on a high. I'm on such a high. And it's a reflection of, you can feel my embodiment of this material being in my presence. And like, that's a really, really beautiful place to be in, is that like, I am authentically this material and this content and manifestation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because there's so many people nowadays who have put out a little sign as a manifestation coach or a money coach or whatever. And the vast majority of them are not successful yet. And I know we have a lot of people that follow you and who are, working on businesses like that too. And there was a certain point in time where you put out your, sign saying, I'm now available for this, to coach you. How do you get from there to where you're at now? And like, how do you make that jump from being just starting to like actually living it and like getting the results and, really being able to help people get those results too, versus just kind of being in like the wannabe category?
Oh, I love that. So I think about identity a lot in this. When I read Atomic Habits, and you're going to have to find the author's name because I don't know, but Atomic Habits I read this summer. And there was one thing in that book that I just was like, yes, this describes it so much. So he used an example of somebody deciding that they're going to learn to play the guitar. And so what happens is that you take a course or you get a book and you get the guitar and you start to practice. And you are essentially like a novice guitar player, or you're learning to play the guitar. But the real shift happens in your ability to play the guitar the moment that you decide that you are now a musician. You're no longer someone learning to play the guitar. You're a musician. It is a shift in identity. And that shift in identity doesn't happen when you become a perfect guitar player. It happens the moment that you're like, I get this. I got this. I'm in flow. I believe in myself. I enjoy this. This is fun. And so it's actually moving yourself to that place where you're now the embodiment of the identity versus just dipping your toes in the water versus jumping in. So many people are, I'm a coach and I'm trying to grow my business. I never identified as a novice or a newbie. I was like, listen, I am going to build the identity of somebody who is an action taker, who is unstoppable, who achieves success in everything she does. I'm going to nurture that. And then I'm going to jump in the pool and be a musician. And that's a different energy. You can feel it even when I talk about it. Totally. I'm not trying to do nothing. I'm doing it. And that requires a level of faith. And I think this is a good segue just into what my actual manifestation philosophy is that I teach. I teach spirituality meets peak performance. And I don't know where I came up with this, but I was literally like, what's different about me? Like I teach you how to peak perform. Yes. But there's this whole spiritual side. There is this whole oneness with spirit. There is universal law. There is faith. Faith is what has allowed me to do what I have done. Believing in the unseen and actually trusting that it's going to show up the way that I want is so beautiful. And that's part of spirituality. That faith is probably one of the most difficult things to teach. To teach someone to have faith, I cannot force you to have faith, Tommy. I have got to just inspire you to have that moment where you're like, I'm going to have faith today. Why am I going to have faith? Because I believe in something greater. I believe in greater possibility. I believe in what I see in my imagination. I believe in universal law. I believe in visualizations, all of these things. So my millionaire program is so much spirituality, then the intellectual part, and then we move it into the body. It's literally wholeness, living on all three planes.
So how does one cultivate more faith? Like where do you get more faith from?
I think the more that you study faith, the more faith you will develop. So if you put your attention to the idea of faith, I'm going to give you two little things that you can do right now to grow your faith. I actually had somebody message me today, and I responded to them, and this is what I told them to do. They could feel that they have some doubt. They're about to launch something in their business. They have some doubt around it. They called me to say, what do I do? They messaged me, what do I do? I said, well, it feels like you just need more faith. Okay, so then how do I get more faith? Study faith for 30 days straight. If you study nothing but faith for 30 days, you will develop more faith. Guess why? Because you're not focused on your fears when you're reading a book about faith. So study faith, read faith, think about faith, put faith on a Post-it note all over the place that says have faith, or today I have faith. Every morning I choose to be in absolute faith today. I choose to be in open receipt and faith today, something like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to ask yourself, who am I when I have complete faith? How do I feel? How do I think? How do I feel? What is the version of me that has, unstoppable faith? What's different? Because what that allows you to do then is that in the moments where doubt does come back in, you can say, no, I'm the faithful version today. I'm going to be the one that is acting in faith. Success is faith expressed in action. So when you have faith, you move your body differently than if you don't. So it's all connected. It's all in line. But I would suggest those two little things.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the more you learn about you, like the more you study the mechanics of your mind and the system of your soul, faith is a natural byproduct because you learn that it all works together.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Tommy, I often think about when we were toddlers, like when we were little kids and we were learning how to be a human in this world, right? We arrived in the body and we were ready to get going. We didn't know how to walk. We didn't know how to feed ourselves. We didn't know how to do anything, but we had absolute faith that we were going to figure that out. And it was this fun faith too. It was like, you know what? I'm going to try to roll around and see what happens. I'm going to try to move my body along the floor and see what happens. And we laugh and we get them to move over here and we get them to do that. And we use fun little things to get them going, but they have absolute faith. And even the little toddler that stands up for the very, very first time has faith that if I fall back down, I'm just going to end up where I just was anyways. Who cares? It wasn't so bad right there. So to me, it's about going back to our natural state. The patterns and the programs and the conditioning that we've had has made us very fearful. And some of the things that we are afraid of are actually not that scary at all. And yet they become, this detrimental type of feeling. And so the more that you go back and you ask yourself, what would I have done at a younger age? Or what would I have done when as I'm getting older, Tommy, I don't want to do some of the things I used to do. I know we were talking about this earlier. I don't want to go on roller coaster rides anymore. But the younger me loved that stuff because I didn't know as much. Now I'm like, oh God, that roller coaster ride's been there for 40 years. I don't think it's serviced. So the less you know, the more fearless you are. But I think that we can just convince ourselves of the opposite as we get older, like unlearn, decondition, unprogram, and make ourselves just so much more faithful in all the things that we do. True trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, this might be a good place to kind of wrap this episode up. Do you have any final thoughts? You know what? The one last thing I'll talk about, and this is so near and dear to my heart and is so important, is the connection between self-love and manifestation. If you follow me, you know that I talk a lot about body image, my body image, and how I believed that I need to be in a thinner body to achieve success. And the moment that I decided to love myself in the body that I am in then, the body that I'm in now, I know my body is starting to really, really change, but
It's the self-love that I have for my physical body that has allowed me to remove a lot of those limiting beliefs. So maybe we'll do an entire episode on this concept. But literally, the more you love yourself, the more you will love life. And that is inevitable.
Agreed. Well, I think that's a really good preview for next week's episode. Let's do that next week.
Okay, I love it. So let's talk about that. Self-love, loving the body that you're in. How, and we'll talk about this. Maybe this will be the title of it. I'm loving myself to better myself. Most people want to be better and they hate themselves now and want to be better. And they get down on themselves and they judge themselves and they give themselves harsh criticism to try to be a better version. And I really want us to stay in that feeling of love and respect for ourselves in order to become our better version.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will be good next week then. So Beautiful. Tune back in.
There we go. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Kathleen.
And Tommy.
And don't forget that the limit does not exist.